Happy New Year. It's noon Thursday, the first Thursday of January 2024. Listen, sometimes on Coffee with Ralph, I get a little deep, and sometimes it can get kind of serious. But listen, we're coming into 2024, and I want to start this out by looking back at 2023 a little bit and moving forward and telling a story. You see, people ask me all the time what makes Fireproof Wealth Management or Fireproof Financial Group different than the rest of them out there. And truly, it's me. That sounds pretty conceited, but let's go dive into that a little bit. But let me first tell you a story about a man I know, known him all my life. And as a child, he can remember his father taking care of his dad and his mom in a care situation. And he can remember his grandmother on his mom's side being taken care of by his mom and dad. And we weren't told what was going on. He was told, well, Grandpa just had a little bit of a bad spell and he needed to stay with us. But one day he disappeared, and we were told later on in life that he had drank himself to death. I guess that means cirrhosis of the liver. Not sure. But he was told that his grandma fell off her tricycle. Now, you got to think about that a minute. This man was like 8 or 9 years old, and grandma did run. She did ride a tricycle, one of those big adult tricycles. And so it made sense. She fell off and hit her head. Years later, of course, he realized that that was a cerebral stroke. And her care was left to his mom. And she lasted about 7 or 8 years. But I was told years and years ago by a long-term care nurse that those that take care of the chronically ill become chronically ill. And what followed in this man's life was the fact that his mom and his dad both needed care simultaneously. His dad ended up with cancer of the intestinal colon, and most of it was removed. And so he lost his ability to work and provide for his family. He did get a small pension from the VA because he was a World War II veteran. And he did get disability, Social Security, I guess. He got something, not a lot of anything, but it was left to this young man to provide for his family in that time. And that went on. That went on for a long time. This young man that I knew actually ended up paying for his mother's funeral. She passed away, I believe it was around 65. Well, they found out later that that was paid for twice. So when it came time to help with his father's funeral, he just declined the invitation. But I think the generational obligation thing has to be looked at a little bit differently. You see, care is something that we're all going to need. And it seems like we just depend on our families to know what we want and what we need and how we're going to pay for it. It's just an assumption. It's dumped in the lap of the children, and those children are left trying to fill in that blank. Does that mean we're bad parents? Bad planners? You know, the truth is this: none of us want to look at this. Absolutely none of us, myself included, and think that someday the ability to take care of ourselves is not going to be there. What's worse is most of us don't take the time to put in writing what we want from our families, from our caregivers, from whatever, from our assets, from our bank accounts, from our wife, from our husband. We don't talk about it because it's not pleasant. It's not easy. But what's more difficult than that is being left in that bag. You see, that man grew up, had a moment in his life where he needed family support and didn't get it. Does he look back and despise his family for that? No, not really. That had a lot to do with his father, and his father's actually hatred towards him as he grew into a man. But when it came time, that same person that despised him looked to him for help. Well, as a Christian, we know we're supposed to help. But as an injured young man, that young man just said, nope, not doing it, and left. And of course, that made him the black sheep of the family. The interesting thing of that whole point of that story is the fact that we see generationally how this stuff continues to compound itself. This young man also knows an Indian from India who, it's very clear, it's voiced out as soon as that young man reaches age of consent. He's told that his responsibility, the oldest son, his responsibility is to take care of his father and his mother. Point blank, just there it is. That's your obligation. So there's a deal. At least it's voiced, and that's what I had to say about that. It's said out loud. It's not kept in private. It's not expected. It's not just anticipated. It's vocalized. It's told. Now, live your life with that under your belt, and you hope that that day when mom and dad needs help comes, that is short-lived. The unfortunate part of our short-lived situations anymore is it's not short-lived. When I started in this business eons ago, or let's go this way, 2007 is when I decided that I needed to focus on long-term care and the planning aspects of it. When I looked at it, I thought, man, this is something everybody should just do. This is something that, yeah, you know what, it's uncomfortable. But it's less uncomfortable to sit and talk with a trusted advisor who understands how to put these plans together than it is to try to vocalize your wants and needs to a family when you might not be there at 100% of capacity or your capabilities or your mentality, or they'd be stuck in a situation with the inability to understand what you want because there's no way you can tell them you've had a stroke, you can't communicate. But yet it's in their ballpark to figure out what's best for you. It's one of those situations in life that makes Fireproof what it is. The name Fireproof isn't just a name. I tell people you need to fireproof your family. And people look at me like, I don't understand what you mean. So a brief story about another young man I grew up with, who as a young adult in his 20s, mother was stricken down with some dreaded disease, I can't remember what, and her need for care was 24/7. 24/7. So this young man, out of love for his mother, moved in with her and took care of her for the next 30 years. Yeah, 30 years. Didn't think about his future. He didn't think about his retirement. He's now 65, as I am 65, and he has nothing. He's in a trick bag. But the worst part of that story isn't that. I mean, he can go to work, he can do some things, he's pretty bright. But the worst part about it is that his family, his brothers and sisters, actually accused him of stealing from his mother. Stealing the money that he had used to take care of her all those years. I think it was an accident, actually, that put her in that need of care. Can't remember. But here it is. Here's the perfect situation. They know none of those children were there to help mom in her time of need, except for my friend who gave up his life for that. And in truth, that's what we all do when it comes time to take care of a loved one, our parents. We give up a portion of our life. A lot of times that's the ladies, because they're the caregivers amongst us. And so they give up their job and their 401k and their ability to put savings away and their ability to plan for their future, because now it's their obligation to take care of their parents. So I think generational obligation like this needs to be looked at differently. We need to look at this from the aspect of, now that we've gone through it and we've seen our parents gone through it, and really, if you think about it, you probably saw your grandparents go through it with one of the family members somewhere along the line. Why is it we let this perpetrate itself? We talk about child abuse, and we've got to stop child abuse and violent crime. We got to stop violent crime. But we don't talk about stopping this generational passing of the torch to take care of us when we get sick and old. So Fireproof stands out there and says, hey, we need to fireproof your family. Not just you, not just your assets, your life, the love your family has for each other. Because there's a truth amongst long-term care providers. They'll tell you that providing long-term care does not draw a family together. It pulls a family apart, as it did with my friend's family and him taking care of his mom. Even though he gave up his entire life to take care of her, he's been accused of stealing from her. Families are like that. Money is strange. Money creates adversaries out of families. Why? None of us really have the answer to that. But there is an answer for us that do this planning. Let's make sure everything's down in writing. Let's make sure that it's videotaped so that it can't be contested. Let's make sure everything's witnessed and notarized. Let's make sure your estate plan's in order. What makes me different? What makes Fireproof different? I insist on this. This isn't something that's secondary. Oh, by the way, now that I have your assets, let's talk about long-term care. Oh, you don't want to? Oh, okay, that's fine. No, that's passing the buck. That's taking the easy road out. If you want to be a client, if you want to work with me, then we will work on the long-term care picture. We will make sure that when it comes time for you to need care, or your spouse even needing care, it's going to be right. It's going to be what you wanted or you want. It's going to be paid for the way you want it paid for. And it's going to involve your children the way you want your children involved. It's going to shield your grandchildren from seeing the stress that it's putting on mom and dad. Yeah, they see it. Remember, that young man that I was talking about that remembers his grandpa being taken care of by his dad and his grandma being taken care of by her mom. That's me. I've seen numerous generations of this now. I see it happening in families around the nation, among clients who refuse to sit down and take the time to do the hard work, so that when the hard work's necessary, it's a piece of cake. Hey, listen, this has been Coffee with Ralph, and this conversation is a free conversation. This podcast that I do here is about education. Coming this year, we're going to be digging in deep on different subjects, from long-term care to life insurance to what can an annuity do in these cases. Let's take a look at what a good-looking plan, a well-executed, well-designed plan looks like when it comes for long-term care, so that you know how you can better protect your family. Remember, Coffee with Ralph every Thursday, noon, coffeewithralph.com, free 15-minute phone call with me. God bless. Have a great day.